Hello, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Monday, August 25th, 2025, and we're back for another important video. We're going to be taking a look at the secret to understanding President Trump's Ukraine strategy. Most people are looking at President Trump's Ukraine strategy as a give and take. First, you know, beefing up Ukraine, their defenses, encouraging Zelensky, and then going over to uh, meet with President Putin and praising him. And, they're saying that he's trying to find a middle point between the two. He's trying to bring the two sides together. Um, and this is his strategy. His strategy is try to get peace and to stop the killing as quickly as possible. I think that is a failed way to look at President Trump's Ukraine strategy. President Trump sees things in terms of profit and loss. He sees things in terms of finances and investing. He's a businessman. He's not a politician or a diplomat. So, trying to take what President Trump is doing and put it into terms of diplomacy or some kind of statecraft, that's just like trying to take a round peg and trying to put it into a square hole. So no matter how much you try, you're never gonna understand what is the strategy of President Trump. So here we go. The President Trump is something called stop loss strategy. Stop loss strategy is an investing strategy. It is a strategy to maintain your profits and avoid losses. It usually a stop loss order after you purchase a stock follows the stock up but leaves space for the stock to have these daily ups and downs and fluctuations. But at the same time, it's not down so far that you lose the profit and the gains that you have until the stock begins to turn against you. So anyway, I got a definition of stop loss strategy from ChatGPT. It says in investing, a stop loss order automatically sells a security once it drops to a certain price, minimizing further losses. But the idea is that you don't put it in a losing strategy. You um, you get the stop loss to follow the stock as it goes up, and once it turns against you, then you conserve the gain. So, you know, but initially you put the stop loss at a level below the stock you purchase, so that it has room to fluctuate, and then as it begins to uh, you would hope go up, the stop loss kind of trails it up at a distance so that if some bad news comes out or if there's problems in that sector, the stock begins to fall, then it automatically creates a sell order and you get to conserve um, as much gains as you can from that stock, and you don't allow the stock to go negative on your initial purchase price. So anyway, so that for me is the key strategy of President Trump here regarding the Ukraine situation. So anyway, if we go back to the map here, um, of the front line, you can see in the green areas the areas that Russia held in 2022. So um, we're starting this would be, so to speak, the starting point. So this would be the purchase price, the green areas, and the current areas that Russia controls is the movement against that stock purchase. So you see that as Russia continues to gain on the front line, Russia begins to occupy more and more of this area, which means that it gets closer and closer to the purchase price of the stock if we're going to look at it in investment terms. So once we get to the city of Kharkiv and we get to the city of Kherson and Zaporizhia, um, then we will see that we're basically at the if we see it in an investment, the stock is at the same price of purchase. So basically, anything after that will be a loss. So right now, President Trump considers that he is gaining, so to speak, on his stock. His stock is still making money, but he wants to get out because he sees that there's bad news, that his stock is losing. And so he's ordering Zelensky, who you could consider his portfolio manager, the order to get out of that stock. So basically, he's telling him he needs to make a peace deal, and he wants um, the guy who's betting against him on that stock, President Vladimir Putin. He's telling President Vladimir Putin that he's not going to put up with losing any more money on that stock. So, anyway, as ridiculous as that sounds, that is basically President Trump's Ukraine strategy in a nutshell. So, again, you see all these areas that Russia controls. Um, is the movement of his quote unquote Ukraine stock against his initial purchase price. And there's other areas up here in green, but you can just ignore those. Russia occupied them only for a short period of time. Then they moved back and occupied this area from Kharkiv um, down towards Kherson. So you can consider that to be the initial um, uh, purchase price of the stock. And so the stock gained as Ukraine won territory. And now that Russia is gaining ground, that stock is losing value. And like I said, once the Russia advance gets to Kharkiv and gets to occupy these green areas, then basically President Trump will be at break even for his stock purchase, if you want to see it in an investment terminology. So um, here's another explanation of a stop loss. So you can see here, this is from a website called buildalpha.com. You can see the entry point. This is formed by a W, where it confirms that there is a bottom and that the stock should rise after that. And so you put the stop loss at the bottom um, of that W, and that is your point of stop loss. So let's say the stock goes up and suddenly falls, it'll generate a sell order once it gets to that point. But I think generally what investors try to do is they try to um, shadow the stock movement to try to conserve more gains from it. But in any case, if we're just going to apply the strategy as presented on this website, Build Alpha, okay, and we can take a look at a real stock to see how this works. Let's go to our favorite telecom stock, Lumen Technologies, which used to be known um, as CenturyLink. So anyway, you see here uh, in hard to see October of 2021, it hit a low point which was 8.7, and then went up. It kind of formed a W uh, at 9.8. So if you were to take that stop loss strategy, as I understand it, you would put the stop loss at 7, and as you can see, the stock lost considerable value, going below $1 at one point, and then it regained its value. But the point here is that the stop loss strategy was to conserve the gains that had been made, conserve your initial investment. So if the stock price goes against you, you don't get a bath in your investment. So anyway, others had presented it slightly different, where it kind of shadows the stock price by $2 or $3. So when it hits a high point, it would have sold off, much at a much higher price, and you would have conserved gains. But just if we just basically apply the stop loss rule as presented in this buildalpha.com website, um, that's basically the stop loss is basically not allowing yourself to go in the red on an investment. So if we go back here to the deep state map, which shows the areas that Russia control and the areas that it has yet to control from 2022, you can see that there's quite a bit of territory left. So at this point, President Trump is gaining. Now, if we take a look here, this is another map of the Ukraine controlled share of national territory by percentage. You can see in 2022, it went down to basically 82%. And we've been staying at that pretty much at this level. We'll be down to 80% soon. So this seemed to have triggered in President Trump this urgency to get out of this stock, if we want to see it again in this investment strategy. So President Trump doesn't want to see Russia gain back this ground that's in the green, because that would mean that he had gained nothing from that stock. In fact, once the Russia gets through this area that's colored in green, then his stock, if you're going to go back here to the idea of an investment, is will be losing money. So President Trump, who's a businessman, who's all into investments, that's the way he thinks. That's what his focus is on. He doesn't care about diplomacy language or statecraft. He thinks about making money and things in investment terms. And stop loss is a key investment term that that if you don't apply correctly as an investment manager, you won't last long in that career. So President Trump is very familiar with all these investment terms. So this is, for me, the key point to understand President Trump's Ukraine strategy. So it's nothing to do with stop the killing, or we need peace, or we need to stop the fighting and blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with that. This is all about not losing his shirt, so to speak, on this investment, which has been Ukraine, with President Zelensky, quote unquote, as his investment manager. So, if you want to see things in that way and in a business language and kind of an investing strategy, President Trump has ordered his stop loss to be executed, and his investment manager won't execute it. This got President Trump very angry. And so, but he was going to take 2 weeks off. Basically, he wants President Zelensky to think about this in investing terms. So maybe they will get together with him. In any case, um, once Russia gets controls all these green areas, and President Trump begins to lose, quote unquote, lose money on his investment, then he may walk away. So this may be that he decided to get out of this investment entirely. So that would be another way to cut his loss, so to speak. But because the United States has invested 350 billion into Ukraine and has so much invested diplomatically and militarily. It's hard to know whether President Trump is going to be able to get out of Ukraine at all. But the panic that he showed about trying to get a peace deal, this can only be understood with this idea of the stop loss. He basically told President Zelensky, yeah, execute that stop loss order, or else. And so then he told President Putin, I don't want to lose any more money on this investment. This is bad for me. And President Trump said, well, it's not my investment, so it's not my problem. In any case, that's my video for today. And this is the way I see President Trump's thinking. If you agree, don't agree, please leave comments below. If you're able to subscribe and share this channel, you help independent journalism. So wish everyone a great day. Take care.